Hey everyone, so Season 1 of Disenchantment arrived on Netflix not too long ago, and before we all move on from the experience entirely, I wanted to share my thoughts on it. Foremost, I must say that the majority of reviews that I've seen for the show pivot their criticisms around comparing Disenchantment to The Simpsons and Futurama, and while I would love to be different and gauge the show entirely on its own merits, it's kinda hard to do. The character designs bleed that signature graining style, with a white-haired buck-toothed girl, an elf in drab washed-out Bart clothes, and Lucy's role in the story feels a lot like pre-character development Bender. Between that and the show boasting several Futurama voice acting alums, it's legitimately difficult to separate Disenchantment from its sister shows. Nonetheless, Disenchantment has good characters, great voice acting, good animation, and lots of jokes. I've seen some reviews point out that the show isn't funny, but I think that's an unfair overgeneralization. While it's true that a lot of jokes miss their target, it's only because of how many jokes per minute are really crammed in there. Really, the show's one big problem isn't the lack of humor, but its lack of interesting commentary on popular trends. You see, what makes and made The Simpsons and Futurama so special was how bold they were in embracing and deconstructing popular tropes of their times. Where Disenchantment fails is providing that sweet nectar of parody and subversion in an intellectual way, often being too timid to really skewer and flip fantasy tropes. In other words, the show takes no worthwhile risks. For example, let's look at this wizard character. He's a pretty standard character with a handful of jokes about extreme sexual behavior, and occasionally reminds us about the elf blood plot. The writers had the chance to skewer old-fashioned medicine, superstition, over-reliance on religious practices in lieu of proper medicine, wacky magical nonsense, etc, etc, etc. But they never really give any interesting subversions to that archetype, which is disappointing to me because I'm actually a D&D player, and jokes about wizards, well, they just write themselves. If you want an example of a character with whom the writers actually have a lot of fun with, Queen Una is a great one. But I'm not just here to pick on side characters. The problem in the big picture is that the writers never really got the balls to push the boundaries. Let's look at The Simpsons for an example. I'm sorry, that's just how it goes. There's a wonderful episode in Season 4 called Homer the Heretic, wherein Homer decides that, going to church sucks, and he wants to stay home and relax instead. While the episode does take humor in contrasting Marge's suffering with Homer's happiness, it doesn't explicitly or distinctly express an anti-religious sentiment, instead exploring the ramifications of Homer's selfish decision on the family, such as the strain it puts on his marriage, and even shows Flanders saving his life. It has great humor, but it also took the time to explore its message, and parodies risky business to a degree, but overall it's very memorable, and in 1992, this took a lot of balls to put on television. It was during this cultural zeitgeist that President George H.W. Bush said that The Simpsons were terrible role models for family, and that's what makes episodes like Homer the Heretic so brilliant, because it was relevant. When it comes to humor, parody and commentary that isn't relevant or relatable to the audience loses its meaning. Where Disenchantment drops the ball here is Elfo. As good of a character as Elfo is, the decision to parody, Little Santa-style elves was very bizarre since these types of elves have really fallen out of fashion. The modern elf zeitgeist. Oh my god, I just said elf zeitgeist. Makes these elves far less familiar, so why pick them over what the audience is more familiar with? It seems like a poor and downright out-of-fashion choice for parody. So after all this bitching, you probably think I hate Disenchantment, but I assure you I did not. I would actually recommend it. I may be salty that Elfo and gang are called elves when they just as easily could have been called gnomes, but he was still one of the better characters. Bean is a lot of fun and represents excellent growth as a female lead, and Lucy got a lot of laughs out of me. Zog had his moments, and hey, the big twist at the end of the season had a lot of decent payoff. Indeed, the show attempts to tell a cohesive story, and it sees it through very well. I think the fairer assessment of Disenchantment is that it has room to to grow. The Simpsons didn't really hit its golden era of comedy until its third season, and Futurama took some time before the characters really grew into their own. So to write it off as just unfunny is unfair. I just think the writers need to spend more time polishing the formula, take some risks, and aim higher. But for now, we just have an average show that's light and fun to watch in the moment, but lacks any punch or bite to leave a big impression. If you're in the mood for a chuckle with some good characters, it's still worth your time, even if it does play it a little safe. Thanks for listening, go check out the show, thanks for being a nerd with me, and I'll see you next time.